speak slowly and clearly to ease interpretation. Use chat box for socializing, sharing links, and please use the Q&A function to ask questions to the panel, which will be addressed, the questions, at the end of the second core session. This webinar is being recorded, as you just saw, and the key takeaways and answers to the unaddressed questions will be made public afterwards. So today's discussion is on an important and timely topic, as the EU and Africa are increasing their mutual engagement on their green and digital ambitions. Indeed, by delving into the commonly shared priority areas, such as the agribusiness sector, the green transition, and digital transformation, we hope that this webinar will provide the right platform to explore synergies which can be created at the junction of foreign direct investment, SME competitiveness, and skills. And to help our reflection, we will present a brief scoping report that the EU-funded and ICMPD implemented Migration Partnership Facility, the MPF, conducted on the modalities and challenges of public-private collaboration on talent partnerships in Morocco. The talent partnerships are the EU's new legal migration and mobility instruments proposed by the new Pact on Migration and Asylum and officially launched in June 2021. These policy instruments, which will be backed by financial support, are intended to be beneficial both for the EU, but also for its strategic partners from the neighborhood, Africa, and the Western Balkans. On the one hand, they offer the EU a wide range of talent attraction approaches based on the labor market needs. And on the other hand, the talent partnerships offer partner countries an integrated approach to mobility skills and investment. Under both circumstances, the private sector will have a critical place, given its roles as investor, employer, and of course, a major contributor to skills creation and development. In fact, the very success or failure of the talent partnerships will largely depend on the extent to which the private sector is involved in the design and implementation of such partnerships. And this will be exactly the angle of our today's session, which consists of two panels. First one is a high-level panel, while the second one is a core panel where we will discuss the findings of our scoping report. Let us now start with the high-level panel, and allow me to introduce and welcome our distinguished speakers, Mr. Henrik Nielsen, Director for International and Horizontal Affairs at the European Commission's Directorate-General for Migration and Home Affairs, who will speak also on behalf of the Director-General, Madame Monique Paria. Mr. Nielsen has been working for the European Commission since 1998 and has previously led the units for international coordination as well as border management and Schengen. And the other high-level panelists whom I would like to also welcome is Mr. Michael Spindelegger, Director-General of ICMPD. Mr. Spindelegger has in the past served as Vice-Chancellor, as well as Finance Minister and Minister for European and International Affairs of the Republic of Austria. My first question goes to Mr. Nielsen. Mr. Nielsen, before we dwell on the role of the private sector in unlocking full potential of talent partnerships, also in terms of attracting more investments for partner countries, could you please give us a full picture of how the European Commission defines such talent partnerships? What has been done so far in making them a reality? And what are the EU's plans in this regard, especially vis-à-vis African partners? Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Moderator, for that introduction. And thank you very much for inviting the Commission to take part in this webinar. You are perfectly right in saying that this is a very important and timely topic to dig deeper into. And certainly together with my colleagues, we look forward to hearing the views of all participants in this very interesting program that you have set up. From my side, to tell you a bit, as you indeed mentioned, one of the overarching policy Documents that frame our work on this topic is the new Pact on Migration and Asylum that the Commission presented in September 2020. Perhaps also useful to flag the joint communication from the Commission and the External Action Service on towards a comprehensive strategy with Africa, where also migration plays a key role, and where the overall aim is to deepen the economic and political ties between Europe and Africa as one of the priorities also of this Commission. In the Pact, we see, first of all, a very strong emphasis on the need to develop legal migration, and more in particular, labor migration. Europe wants and needs to attract talent. We face labor shortages in many economic sectors. And we are also aware of how migration managed in a positive way can have a very positive impact on the development of our partners and our neighbors. We have seen, I think, more than ever during the pandemic, how migrant workers, including those from African countries, have made a vital contribution to the European economy. It's therefore very important for Europe to continue to attract migrants, and legal migration can bring us the right talent and skills, while at the same time avoiding any kind of brain drain in the countries of origin. Second dimension is, of course, the external dimension to migration in the broad sense, which is also one of the priorities highlighted in the Pact, where we want to develop a deeper and closer cooperation with our partners and our neighbors on migration, and where once again legal migration is a fundamental component of that cooperation. So that's a bit where the two come together. Now, in more concrete terms, we see talent partnerships as kind of one of the key elements of the Pact to, let's say, make these general objectives more operational. The talent partnership should develop a kind of a comprehensive framework, as well as the funding support to mobilize all the tools that we have at EU level, at member state level, to improve the overall cooperation on migration management with our key partners. We would see the partnership as providing for the mutually beneficial cooperation with our partner countries, with direct support for mobility schemes for work, or for training, or for capacity building, which could be in such areas such as the labor market or skills intelligence, vocational education and training, integration of returning migrants, and certainly diaspora mobilization as well. What we would like to focus on is to make sure that this would reflect the kind of real labor market demand and supply that we see in the EU as well as in the partner countries, and meet the interests, let's say, of all relevant countries, whether countries of origin, countries of destination, and of course the migrants themselves. This could involve mobility schemes that are temporary, or could be long-term, or also circular. And they could as such be open to all skill levels. This is not intended to exclusively focus on the high skills, but also medium and low skills could be relevant. Likewise, talent partnerships could concern different economic sectors in need of labor in the EU. That might be ICT, it might be science, engineering, healthcare in particular, but also agriculture, food processing, as well as tourism. In terms of the, let's say, geographical scope, there is no fixed, how to say, geographical limitation or scope set out in the Pact itself. But we would see primarily rolling out the first talent partnerships in the EU's neighborhood. There could be the Western Balkans, but it could in particular be Africa, and perhaps in particular North Africa, with the view to expanding to other regions at the later stage. The development of each talent partnership would of course need to be tailor-made, as mentioned, to each of the partner countries, but also preferably take place in the, say, framework of the overall engagement and dialogue on migration between the EU and the partner country in question. That's kind of providing the general framework for that work. Again, for these schemes to work, we do believe they need to match real labor market needs and skills.
Pour pouvoir répondre aux besoins dans les divers pays partenaires de l'Union européenne.
That we bring all relevant stakeholders on board. Both in the countries of origin and destination, to be fully associated, to the very design, initial design of the talent partnerships, and of course to their implementation in practice. And that includes also, once again, the involvement of diaspora associations as one of the most important stakeholders, alongside the employers, social partners, education and training providers. In terms of the timeline, this is certainly a work in progress as we speak now. We formally launched the concept of the talent partnerships at an event chaired by our Commissioner for Home Affairs, Madam Ylva Johansson, in June 2021. We will continue our consultations with, first of all, EU member states in the weeks and months ahead to see if we can finalize the concept and start to operationalize it. Beyond that, we would seek to try to roll out the concrete actions on, let's say, on a rolling basis, a few countries at a time, depending on what priorities we set, but also in terms of the readiness and willingness of partners to engage, and then gradually increase the scope and size of the partnerships as, let's say, we go along. We will try to build on lessons learned from existing labor and student mobility pilot projects that we have carried out with countries in the EU's neighborhood, notably those that have been implemented through the EU-funded Mobility Partnership Facility, as well as through the Emergency Trust Fund for Africa since 2018. These projects have mainly taken place actually in African countries. Can mention Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Senegal, and Nigeria. You are probably aware of the biggest project, which is quite well known under the acronym of TAM, towards a holistic approach to labor migration governance and labor mobility in North Africa. We have also seen other interesting projects with African countries, more on a bilateral basis between individual member states, such as the Digital Explorers project between Lithuania and Nigeria, as well as a new pilot project for business mobility between Belgium and Senegal. We would try to, let's say, scale up the approach that has been followed through this pilot project. So not necessarily scale up the projects themselves, but the underlying approach and concepts that they have developed, and try to draw experiences from that, and see if we can develop that approach into fully fledged talent partnerships and build capacities that can facilitate more mobility for more persons over the long term than what we can do through these smaller scale pilots. Again, on the geographical prioritization, it is for sure that Africa will be very, very high on our agenda in terms of where we see the potential priorities for this kind of upscaling, and where we have quite a solid and growing basis of experience in that region that we can build on. Then, of course, it will ultimately be for the member states to decide whether they wish to be part of a talent partnership, whether they wish to pursue it, whether that would be in Africa or elsewhere. But it will be, let's say, a top priority for us to encourage as many member states as possible to join in this new adventure, to come aboard with concrete proposals that we can help to facilitate and also provide the funding. And that's a bit the dialogue that we will be having in the next weeks and months with the member states to bring as many as possible on board. I think that's what I wanted to contribute by way of introduction. So thank you for your attention, and let me also wish you continued success with the webinar. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Nielsen, for this very useful insight. Indeed, I think that with the elements you provided, we are at the right moment now to kickstart also from our side the reflection on the role of the private sector, which is one of the key players. And what I take also from your intervention is that you mentioned these talent partnerships need to reflect real labor market demand and supply. And this is where the private sector will also play a key role. With regards to the lessons learned, we will also hear about those lessons learned in our core panel. But I also want to use this opportunity. You said that you will very soon start new engagement or scaling up of the previous projects. to announce that the MPF, Migration Partnership Facility, has already put out a call for proposals, and interested partners or actors can already look at the website of the Migration Partnership Facility to see what is possible and what type of initiatives can be funded under the instrument. Thanks again for your intervention. Now, I would like to bring in our Director-General. Dear Michael, under your leadership, ICMPD has been constantly intensifying its engagement with the private sector on skills and investment dimensions. So how important do you think is the engagement of European companies in the talent partnerships for furthering investments in the also potential host countries? And also, what should be modalities of public-private collaboration on such partnerships? Director-General.
Thank you very much, Sergo, for these questions. Before starting, I would like to welcome all the speakers and participants of this very important webinar. And I also would like to thank very much our team of MPF. I think they have done a lot of efforts to organize this, and they are very much engaged. As you can think, this is a very future-minded and future-oriented issue to discuss how we could use also private initiatives to solve all the different issues concerning migration. And I think if you have a look to the past, how many people have been discussing now how to involve the private sector over the years. This was an amazing story, but if it comes to concrete experience, there are just few organizations that really can say, these are the problems if you start this dialogue with private sector. And I would like, of course, to elaborate a little bit about this. We have done now 2 different projects with the involvement of especially SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. And of course, there are a lot of experience we would like to share, but to summarize, the projects are in Turkey, how to bring Syrian refugees to start their own business. This is most interesting, and to cooperate here with the private sector. A second one is in Nigeria. We are starting now with a new industrial park where Austrian enterprises are starting their businesses, and we are, of course, getting in touch with young Nigerians to be trained so that they can work for these private companies. And the third one is support from Germany. We are now dealing with an interlinkage between skills partnerships, and also this is a real, very different thing. But anyhow, as Mr. Nielsen said, you always have to look for tailor-made solutions. Nothing is a role model, really. You have to look to the different countries being involved. You have to look to the SMEs being involved, and you have to look, of course, to all the supporters, especially those who give you the money just to implement projects like that. But just let me say, our experience is a very good one at the moment. I think we had a lot of very good and successful steps done in the past. And I would like to focus why to involve private sector companies. I think this is the most important question. And I think in that, first of all, you have to look who is really in the position to create new workplaces. It's only the private sector that can create business with a lot of workplaces, especially in the countries of origin. And they have a lot of knowledge about that because they are in the market, they are in the competition. And if they are ready to create new workplaces, there has to be something fundamental behind, because otherwise they will not do. So it's always a convincing process that they really start their business in a special country. But of course, I think it's really amazing because then you have mostly sustainable solutions with really new workplaces in the field, in the country of origin. Secondly, of course, they can also use their headquarters in Europe to train their staff to the specific needs and standards. Also, this is mostly important. And thirdly, the small and medium-sized companies, they have knowledge of several markets, administrations, and the extensive networks. Also, this is needed because this should not be a replacement for activities in the private sector from the public sector. It should be a cooperation for the future. And I think looking at these big advantages why to involve the private sector is very convincing. They will create really a very good workplaces for young people, especially in the countries of origin. And of course, if you cooperate with them in the right way, this could be a new dimension in the whole migration issues. But also you have to look on the other side. Why should private companies cooperate with the public sector in dealing with migration issues? Also, this is, I think, something where you have to give an answer. Very clear, if you are competitive, if you are successful as an enterprise, you don't need the public sector. Yeah, but if it comes to this cooperation, there are a lot of different things why also companies need the public sector. And this is how to create the different curricula for different workplaces, for different skills. So the companies need somebody who is in the position to do the work, but on the other side, they also would like that it is recognized that this is the state of the art, that this is something that is very much linked to the standards you need to be competitive in the future. So they need also the public sector in that way. And they need, of course, these trainings. This is not ending up if you have a first degree in something. Of course, you have to be trained your lifelong. We all know that about. And this is something where also there is a need for cooperation with universities, for cooperation with the public sector, how to get always to the last and the best curricula and the best service you can bring for a different company. So also I think the other way around is very clear. So it is just how to cooperate and how to find really a very good platform, how you can of course look for investments of the private sector in countries related to migration issues. And this and that is what we have learned during the last years. What we need is a very good dialogue, a dialogue with the different companies where you can get the feeling and looking through the eyes of an entrepreneur. Because if you don't understand why they are ready to cooperate and what they need and what are the conditions for them just to start business and these skills partnerships, then you will fail. So I think that is maybe something where organizations like ICMPD could help, could be the bridge between public and private sector, and also use opportunities for the future, how to create jobs, and of course to find solutions for all the migration issues we have today. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful discussion during this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Many thanks for nicely setting the scene also for our ensuing discussions. Indeed, if we want to strive sustainable solutions, there is no better one than to have the private sector on board. We can fund as much as possible, but not limitless initiatives. Therefore, if the private sector is on board upstream, this can create sustainable solutions. And yes, what I take also from your intervention is that private sector's engagement will also create real solutions which shouldn't emerge in vacuum, but based on the real needs, be it for training, be it for employment, and this will also facilitate the logical sequence of all this will be the mobility, obviously, for training or for employment. Therefore, this is how the talent partnerships can play out. And on the dialogue, yes, ICMPD, with all the humbleness, we can play this.
Alors, en toute humilité, nous pouvons jouer ce rôle d'intermédiaire.
General Spindelegger, and let us now, ladies and gentlemen, move to our core session, part 2, where we will present the scoping paper, which we carried out within the MPF, and which is a case study on Morocco. And we have 5 distinguished panelists to discuss all these questions. The first one is Mr. Mimshach Obioha, country manager of Telesoftas, Nigeria. He has extensive experience working on business design and consulting for startups and entrepreneurs, including partnership building, training, support for founders, and ventures platform in Nigeria. We have with us Mr. Manuel Rodríguez Díez, who is the head of Economic and Commercial Office of the Embassy of Spain in Morocco. Manuel was one of the co-authors of the case study, and he has also an extensive experience in the past working for different organizations in Spain, but also at the international level. We have with us Mr. Ali Serhani, Associate Director and Recruitment Manager and Gesper Services. He's very much involved also in the employers associations and represents the private sector in the international organization of employers in the field of migration. We have Mr. Naim Bentaleb, Economic Counsellor of the Belgian-Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce in Morocco, and he's also the co-founder of CEO of Expertise Africa. And finally, last but not least, we have Ms. Eden Alemayehu, our colleague from ICMPD, who is project manager of the newly launched project, which Michael mentioned, Inspire. And Ms. Alemayehu has also extensive experience in the field of skills, migration, and mobility. Now, before we present the report, I would like to ask a question to Mr. Obioha, who was involved in one of the previous pilot projects, also mentioned by Mr. Nielsen, to tell us about whether our hypothesis that talent partnerships can unlock investments is the right one, and this is not just an academic discussion. So, Mr. Obioha, please share with us your experience of the Digital Explorers project and how that proved the potential of labor mobility schemes to trigger investment in partner countries, in the case of Nigeria and Lithuania. Mr.
Awesome.
Obioha?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm excited to be able to share my experience with everyone, and thanks, Sergio, for that question. So the Digital Explorers program was one of the pilot programs under the ICMPD funded legal migration pilot schemes. And it entailed taking ICT specialists from Nigeria to Lithuania for a 1 year, we called it a 1 year traineeship program, where we placed them within Lithuanian companies, and then also ran some capacity building, upskilling programs for them pari passu. And then the plan was to bring them back to Nigeria and reintegrate them back into Nigerian society for those who were not retained within the firms that they worked at. As part of this program, we realized that it was so I was part of the program from the onset, from the conceptualization stage, in partnership with some Lithuanian companies, which included Africo, who was one of the lead partners, Enterprise Lithuania, Code Academy, Yeah, and so basically one of the key things that we knew was important was for people to meet people and for people to understand and to interact and to engage, because we realized that Lithuania has had little or no engagement with Nigeria, and Nigeria doesn't necessarily have the best PR on the global scene. So when you call talent, you probably wouldn't call Nigeria in that conversation. You probably say Nigerian oil or Nigeria and all the other negatives that you hear. But when it comes to talent, it wasn't a big thing that you hear, or even Nigerian tech back then. And so it was quite a hard bargain or hard sell to companies to say that we want to bring you talents from Nigeria and they are ICT talents and you would be able to work with them. And it was a very difficult sell, like we said. So we organized a hackathon in Nigeria after a rigorous selection process, of course. And part of the selection process was this hackathon. And then we reached out to Lithuanian companies to say, come to Nigeria and see these people in action. We know you're doubting, we know you're not sure, but if you see them working on real problems, developing software, you would be able to believe, and you can engage and interact with them in that process. Now, one of the key things we realized in this was most of the companies sent their HR managers or specialists on this trip, which isn't exactly bad. But one particular company sent or came, the founder himself came, and that company is Telesoftas. And the reason why this is also sort of important in the mix is that for a lot of times, you need the key decision maker in the room to experience, because there's only so much you can explain when you're going back and you're reiterating an experience to somebody else. But this time, the founder for this company came, and in engaging with the developers who were building our software at this bootcamp, he literally saw the potential and the expertise and like he would say, he fell in love with Nigeria and Nigerians at that point. And so different companies recruited from that process, and he and Telesoftas recruited a couple of developers into the company. Now, fast forward 1 year later, Telesoftas now had experience working with these people. It was sure that we could onboard Nigerians. They were working on projects. There was no difference between Nigerians and Lithuanians working on those projects. Clients were excited at the performance of the Nigerians on the project. And the clients didn't even care if they were working out of Lithuania, if they were working out of Nigeria. And so when it was time for Telesoftas to expand, because of course, like you know, there is a shortage of talent, and also particularly technical talent in Europe, and in Lithuania, almost so much worse. And there was time for them to expand, because that was the only way that we could continue to do more business. And the founder had to decide where to expand to. Nigeria was top of the list. And the reason why this is like I said again, it was because there was a decision maker in the room that was part of that delegation. There was a decision maker that engaged and was able to realize the potential and fall in love, and now could make a strategic decision on how to invest in Nigeria. So our Nigerian office is just a couple of months old. The Nigeria entity was registered in November. We just recruited our first set of people. We have 9 staff members in Nigeria, but the number, according to our strategic plan, is to grow that number to 100 in about 3 years. And these are tech talent, these are senior developers, these are people that are going to be working out of Nigeria on the global market, but for an European company. And I wanted to just add this in the mix is when we typically have economic delegations, because part of my previous job at Ventures Platform included hosting a lot of international delegations from different embassies. And typically when we have those delegations come in, it's very short engagements, 30 minutes. It's very high level conversations with key stakeholders or government stakeholders, but very rarely do they have to engage directly with the people and with the talent. And so when they leave with a half-baked sort of experience about what is really possible. And so it's only what the government people want them to hear that they end up hearing. And many times the government still keeps pushing the narrative for oil or for aid. But we have a very growing and vibrant technical and IT ecosystem in Nigeria, which last year alone, we had about 2 new unicorns in the tech ecosystem, with fintech, of course, leading the pack. But we're seeing a lot more investment in Africa, and particularly in Nigeria, the tech ecosystem. And this is also increasing the demand and also the training of technical talent, and which is also sort of creating a ripple effect where these talents are now going and creating and working globally for Canada, for China, and now for Europe. So
ces talents nigériens à travailler partout dans le monde, en Chine, au Canada, en Europe.
one case study of how a project that was a pilot project has now created an avenue for an European company to now set up a base in Nigeria with the support they're required to make that happen, but also now making investments into the ecosystem. And I think that if we really break down the project and see what the real components were, we can actually get some very valuable lessons about how these kinds of things can create more engagement, but also can incentivize more investments into Africa.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Very interesting indeed, and very promising and insightful. What you have just mentioned, that just a small or this EU-funded project led to such an expansion of operations of Telesoftas in Nigeria, with so many 9 staff members and maybe additional coming in. Thanks a lot. And I also retain from what you said that there is a real need for the private sector engagement, but also so that they have direct communication with the talent, so to say. And it's great to have the public intermediaries, but we should also create a space for the direct engagement between these two very important actors. Thanks a lot. We will come back to you later on. And now I would like to ask Manuel Rodríguez Díez to present the report, the scoping report. Dear Manuel, please briefly introduce the scope as well as main challenges, opportunities and recommendations regarding skills development investment through mobility in Morocco. You have around 8 to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sergo. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I will try to be brief. In the scoping paper, we try to use a simple methodology throughout interviews to assess the challenges, modalities, and opportunities of collaboration and investment between the private sector and public sector. So would be put the feet on the ground and try to assess what companies really need, in this case, in Morocco. This scoping paper was developed between September and October of 2021 using literature review and especially SME interviews, European SME interviews, okay? There are some shortcomings. There was a small participation in the interview, reflecting generally the difficulty of engaging the private sector with the public sector. Many of the companies believed these interviews being one more interview, they were being asked online or in person. So it was a bit difficult to engage them, but we had a 15% participation in the end, and we could extract some interesting conclusions. We focused in 3 strategic sectors for Morocco. The first one is agribusiness. The second one is the digital economy, and the third one is the renewable energies. But in all 3 sectors, you have local actors and European actors, so we had the chance to analyze all of them. Our research question was, what skills European companies need, and how can we focus to develop a practical competency collaboration system between the public and the private sector, so we could, let's say, trigger a virtuous cycle between the possibility of these companies to getting good skilled workers, increasing their productivity, in consequence, increase their profitability, and in a late stage, these companies would be the attractors of foreign direct investment towards Morocco. So they would generate a virtuous cycle between skills and foreign direct investment. The sectors we chose are very important in Morocco. They are business friendly. The Moroccan government has directed significant resources and has directed significant programs to develop these sectors. We believe there are 3 high potential sectors. Let's start with the agribusiness sector. We can say the agricultural sector in Morocco represents around 14% of the GDP and provides around 25% of industrial jobs in the country. We have the Green Morocco Plan and Green Generation Plan for 2020-2023. Okay, they're very important. Le Plan Maroc Vert. These programs are very important for Morocco. They aspire to channel resources and to develop these sectors in the sense of increasing the food scientists, the supply chain managers, the use of green energy to the agri-food industry, develop soft skills and management skills that are something very important in this sector in Morocco. In the renewable energy sector, Morocco is highly dependent on energy, and he has increased in his new development plan a big strategy to develop a greener Morocco, to decarbonize the economy in Morocco. And we feel that this is a sector that offers a lot of opportunities, both in the skill area and the investment area. So we try to analyze companies that work in the renewable energy sector, thermal engineers, experts in energy efficiency. We try to tackle all those areas. And last but not least, the digital sector. The digital sector has grown a lot in Morocco during the pandemic. Also, Morocco has launched the Digital Plan for Morocco 2020, which seeks to increase the contribution of this sector to the economy, which is around nowadays 5 to 6% of the GDP and around 2% of the jobs in the country. And especially there are certain skills that are being developed, like digital security and social networking and cloud systems. So these three sectors are three sectors in which the public sector is already engaged, with their important private actors, both European and local, and to which we directed our interviews. Let me summarize quickly the interviews, okay? We selected 72 European SMEs of a wide range of countries. We try to focus in those countries where there's a bigger commercial or investment relationship, okay? And we surveyed this to see which skills these companies were interested in developing and which skills they think they are necessary to develop these sectors. We had the answer of 10 companies, 4 of them digital, 2 renewable, and 4 in the agribusiness from different countries. And all of them, they identify a systematic lack of sectoral collaboration between the public sector and the private sector. Let me get into some details per sector, okay? In the digital sector, most companies pointed out that it was easy to find qualified people in Morocco in generalist terms, but most of the people they found, they had no practical experience. So they would be eager to more practical training in the public sector. The renewable sector had the same problem, more or less. They could find people with a degree, but no practical experience at all. Most of the companies said that they adopted training as a reality inside the company, but they would be very eager to find TVET collaboration between public sector and private sector, and try to also to develop upskilling as a normal within the formation process. In the agribusiness, there's a little bit difference, okay? Technical skills and managerial skills, or let's say soft skills, are not very abundant in the sector, okay? There's less formal education, and there's more a tendency of self-training, okay? Most of companies said that they found qualified, self-trained employees, but they saw an absolute lack of cooperation between the private and the public sector, okay? So in this sense, most of the companies said that a collaboration between the public sector and the private sector would be catalytic for their success in the country, and also to increase investment in the country. They saw a weak link between the private and the public sector. And as a conclusion, our main conclusion of this study was that European SMEs aim at strengthening their formal and vocational training systems in the country. they would love to see a strengthening of this linkage between public and private sector in the vocational and technical training system. They identify themselves as structures of investment towards Morocco, and if this cycle is closed, they are eager to be actively involved in developing this kind of collaboration, including skill planning at national level or developing vocational and educational curricula. And more or less, these are the answer we got from the companies. It's something that's quite relevant, and we are happy to have collaborated with this project.
Thank you, Manuel. Thanks again for your great work on the report and all the new elements emerging out of the report. Many thanks also to the participants who are providing the different sources and references to different projects and reports. Just to mention that one of the lastly mentioned report by Uma Bardak from the ETF, we have extensively used it as well. And as regards the projects implemented by IOM and other partner organizations, we have also looked into what has worked and what needs to be tweaked maybe on this later on. Now I would like to bring in Mr. Ali Serhani. Monsieur Ali, nous avons entendu maintenant Manuel parler des principales conclusions du rapport et surtout des modalités pour forger des partenariats publics-privés qui peuvent bénéficier le secteur.
Proof public-private partnerships to the profit of the public sector and
sur le terrain avec tous les acteurs concernés. Que pensez-vous de l'hypothèse principale du rapport, à savoir le potentiel des partenariats
main idea of the report, the potential of talent partnership?
C'est la première question. Ma deuxième question, c'est en vue des besoins actuels du secteur privé d'un côté et des
on the one hand and of the skills available on the market, job market in Morocco.
L'on peut rencontrer sur place à cet égard. Et enfin, quel serait le cadre pour mieux impliquer le secteur privé dans ce type de collaboration? C'est à vous.
Okay, thank you very much, dear Sergo. I wanted to talk in English, but my English is very broken. That's why I will continue or following in French. Très bien. Donc, je retiens une chose importante, c'est que au niveau du rapport, il parle d'inadéquation des compétences.
In the report, the report talks about skills on the market, and yes, indeed, there is a lot of theoretical knowledge on the market, and most companies also need practice. People with a lot of practical experience, but it's not really available in Morocco, especially with the renewable energy sector, but also in the ITC sector. Now, on the private sector, its commitment remains. Why? Because the private sector does not have any issues. Why? It does not have any nationality. What it wants is skills. Whatever planet they come from, Venus or Earth or Mars, it's the same. They just want skills. When we hire someone, it's because of their skills, not anything else. And the most important thing that we must do, and this is why we talk about migration of labor, skilled labor, of course, but also, as was said earlier, we will not only focus on high profiles and high talents. We need people with very good skills coming to Morocco, for example. And we've been talking a lot about commitment or private public-private partnerships. Let me say something important. Emmanuel is here in Morocco with me, so correct me if I'm wrong, Emmanuel. The Labour Ministry has helped us a lot. There is a very good partnership. We have already said that we don't have the necessary skills in Morocco and that we needed help. And indeed, we can hire whoever we want, as long as those skills are not available in Morocco. Secondly, these people come from abroad, yes, but this might come as a surprise to you. We talk about migration from Europe. And we have also a company who took talents in Guinea, Conakry. They have very high skills and brought added value to Morocco, high-level added value. And what happened? People that we train that are attracted to us, they train the people in Morocco. Let me give you another example. Industrial engineering sector installed in Morocco 10 years ago, and today, or maybe that was 5 or 6 years ago, there were 50 nationalities. Today, it's only 20. We brought back nationalities from Asia, from Europe, from the United States, of course, and also from Canada, that really brought added value to our national skills. And to go back to what Emmanuel was saying, those people who have theoretical knowledge could teach what they have. And today, these people work both in Europe, but also in African countries where we established. So you can see this commitment. So let's go back to reality. Public sector, private sector, you know that perfectly. When you talk about immigration, people tend to be afraid because this is connected with job losses and so forth. But it's a mistake to see it like this. Why? Because skills are the most important thing. And I'm not saying this to make people happy. Skills, skills, skills. We shout it all day long. And this can only...
Parce qu'aujourd'hui, 6 mois en tant que Marocain, je dois recruter. Imaginons que je suis l'homme le plus riche du Maroc.
Hire. Let's imagine that I'm the richest person in Morocco. It's not true, of course, but let's say I am. And if I can hire whoever I want,
du Tanga ou d'Érythrée ou du Rwanda ou quelque chose comme ça.
Rwanda or any country, when skills are available in Morocco. And in any case, I can't do that under Morocco.
Ou de je ne sais où, qui a une compétence assez particulière, qui pour moi, en tant que chef d'entreprise,
for me as a company manager will make it possible to local skills to develop, but also which will help my country to get added value, extra knowledge, to learn something which will make it possible for these people to develop their skills and to reflect on other and to transpose what was learned elsewhere here. So I will get to my conclusion, of course, Sergo. How long do I still have? You still have 3 minutes. Thank you. Let me give you concrete examples that I live on a daily basis. What's the difference between theory and practice? We can crack jokes, of course, it's always pleasant, but let's be serious now. And thank again to Emmanuel. He talked about my country. He talked about the agribusiness. Well, it was good. The pandemic was good for it. But now on renewable energy, we work hard in Morocco at this level because we have a lot of sun, a lot of wind, a positive wind, of course, not negative wind. And we need skills to add skills, value to make it possible to get some extent of energy independence. Now, practically speaking, we hire for some renewable energy companies with people also coming from other countries, notably Japan and Europe. We brought people from Europe, but also from Asia, but also from South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. You don't imagine how much this company progressed. It progressed a lot. And these people who had theoretical knowledge, and 1 year ago only had limited theoretical, and their knowledge was only theoretical. But these people, when they come back to Morocco, either they marry in Morocco to a Moroccan woman, they get they fall in love, but some other leave, and when they leave, there are people from here who take their spot and continue their work. And this is what we are looking for. I hope I answer all the questions.
Je retiens voilà, la phrase « Le talent n'a pas de nationalité ». C'est très intéressant. Deuxièmement, une nouvelle piste que vous avez ouverte ici, c'est peut-être la dimension sud-sud qu'il faut peut-être intégrer dans l'avenir. Mais ma troisième question...
Then I had also a third question. I would like to have an answer from you. What would be the best framework to better involve the private sector in this kind of collaboration? What can we offer the private sector, and how the private sector can be involved in this kind of partnerships? Let me be honest with you. The private sector, you don't really have anything to do, even if you make an offer to it. Never mind. The private sector, how should I put it? I don't want to shock anyone, of course, but when we create a business, it's to make money. Not ethically. I don't have to remind it, of course, work has to be ethical, but private sector exists because they want to make money, and for that they need skills. So you have to ask the right question. What do we have to gain? But if we have the skills, we have something to gain. With the best partnerships in the world, with a structured partnership, hiring international talents with the right schemes in place to encourage contracts between countries. We have with Algeria, with Tunisia, with Senegal. Let me explain. I am from Morocco. If I have to go to Tunisia, to Senegal, or any other countries, I don't have limitations by other countries. And the same goes from other nationalities coming to Morocco. And it makes things easier. Why? Because when you have to hire international talents, if there are conventions in place, win-win conventions, everyone wins. These kind of partnerships must be win-win partnerships. There is a convention with Morocco, supported by ICMPD, the International Employers Organization, and others. It's positive for everyone as long as it is a win-win situation. Let me, for example, tell you what happened in 2011 in Tunisia.
There was a revolution and many Tunisians left. They left the country on the Monday, and on the Tuesday and Wednesday they were in Morocco. They were looking for work just as Moroccans. It was fantastic for them. These people were talents coming to Morocco. It was not just anyone coming to Morocco. These people came to Morocco because it was so close from Tunisia. They decided to go in the family in Morocco with their degrees, and they found work. Last time I took part to an event of the ICMPD or the OIE, I do not remember, I mentioned this. It was before the COVID-19. That person from Tunisia left at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and the next day he was already working for a new boss. Thanks to the public service, thanks to the Moroccan state, we were able to create agreements with different countries. We were able also to ease the recruitment process of different companies. And then I will stop because otherwise I will speak for too long. Morocco had asked the integration to ECOWAS, where different member states belong, among them Nigeria. In this agreement, in the Convention of ECOWAS, there is a part on establishment agreement, so for people or companies coming from Morocco, Tunisia to Morocco and vice versa. So it is about win-win. That's the spirit of a partnership. So in a nutshell, I'm sorry if I was too long. I wanted to be very, very accurate. So in those establishment agreements, we have a partnership between the public and the private sector with the support of international organizations. I thank Mr. Nielsen talking about the TAM project. I'm the representative of the private sector in that project. I know what he was talking about, and he's completely right. And there are many efforts with Tunisia and Egypt. It is going in the right direction. There are a lot of exchanges of ideas. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we had a lot of issues. And thank you for bearing with me. No, thank you very much. It was a very
Monsieur Ali. Alors, my next question goes to Naim, Mr. Naim Bentaleb. Naim, I have a similar question for you. You work closely with the European private sector, and you have this angle of seeing things from that perspective. So, what specific industries or occupations within the green, agribusiness, and digital sectors do you see as the most promising for skills attraction, skills building, and investments, both internationally and in Morocco? And then in each of those promising industries, occupations, how can we meaningfully engage key stakeholders, in particular the private sector, in talent partnerships? You have 8 to 10 minutes, Naim.
First of all, Sergio, thank you very much for this meeting. Was actually talking about talent partnership, and what we are all doing together is somehow doing some partnership with all the talents we have around the table to find solutions to our business, to the general economy. Also, I think
entreprises pour l'économie.
I've said just before is quite complete. I will not tell much more than that. First of all, what have been said at the beginning is that we need to make sure to avoid brain drains, because brain drains is a huge problem in every country that we are talking about today, and for the same kind of the same kind of profiles. Actually, everybody is missing IT people. We have the French people, for example, leaving to the US. We have the Moroccan going to France, and we have the Senegalese coming to Morocco. And so actually we are just having a lot of mobility who's already existing a lot. I think that most of the added value will be on time and material. I think in the different sector we have discussed about with our digital, agro-business, and new energies, because a lot of companies, for example, European companies today, they are missing of blue collars a lot. Maintenance engineers, for example, there are a lot of Moroccans who go to Europe. We had such a project last year to build a factory in Belgium where we had to send 30 Moroccans. Also, we need to make sure, and what we notice that it's sometimes between the countries there are some conflict of interest on some skills. I will give the example of Morocco. In Europe, we need some extra blue collars in automotive sector, for example, but in Morocco too, and we're not very happy to see them leaving. So there are different things that can be done, and that has already been done. I will give an example for the one who like the football clubs. I think football clubs are a very good summary of what needs to be done. For example, in Morocco, you have a training academy from Arsenal or from PSG, who are actually small trainings where when youth come to play football, where they learn football, and where the big clubs can scout them. And I think that's what some multinationals are doing also. A lot of consultancy companies in Morocco are working on the local markets. They have here 500, 600, 700 people that work the local market or work remote for Europe, because that's another solution for the lack of talent is the remote work. We see it today. We have a lot of talent from all around the world doing a meeting, and we don't care where we are actually physically. So we have that possibility to work from remote. And you have two big IT companies in Morocco. What they do is that they come here, they train people, they try to win, of course, local markets. They try to benefit of the South-South relationship that have been told by Mr. Serhani to develop also business in West Africa. But the best people from those companies can easily travel within the same company, which means that the company need to have the private sector need to have a more global view on HR or HR mobility. And when an HR in Belgium look at his skill set he has internally, he needs to look broader. I will give you an example. It happens to me. to place, because we have a recruitment agency in Morocco. We are specialized in recruitment, and actually, what we do sometimes is that I have a group in Morocco. I find someone from the same group who was in Dubai. It's a Moroccan who was in Dubai, or a French guy who want to come to Morocco, who's in the same group, and actually at the end they struggle or they're not happy to pay the invoice because the guy was in the same group, but they didn't know that the guy wanted to leave and come through. So I think that there is a huge work to be done inside the companies, and also because the private sector some companies need to take the lead, and I think the one who will do it will be very fine in the next coming years, because the challenge on IT or on some agri-technologies, and mostly the technology, will be a very big war, I believe. And the youth and the people going out of school are not sufficient. So what has been done, for example, in Morocco, which is very interesting, and that's, I think, something that needs to be done for other sector. In Morocco, we have the aeronautical sector, who's very powerful, and what they did a big center. It's called in Morocco, it's called Lima, l'Institut des Métiers Aéronautiques. How does that work? Actually, the lead is taken that year was from Boeing. And so a lot of aeronautical company build that center, and when they want some new resources, they go to the center and they said, "Voila, what I'm looking for exactly." And they meet the candidates, and after 3 months or 6 months after the training, they go to those companies. It's very impressive, and also a lot of companies like Safran, Boeing, Airbus, all the ones who are here, when they come and they see that, they said, "Wow, we don't even have that in Europe." And actually, that center is a very good example of what needs to be done by federations. I think the most important thing is to work with the federations of every sector. Has a very strong federation. For example, another example that works very well is was an exchange between Agora. Agora is the Federation of IT in Belgium, and l'APB in Morocco, which is the equivalent. There was also the labor agencies from Flanders in Belgium and the one from Morocco, and they managed to get 30 IT guys going from Morocco to Belgium. So, but that was led by the federations, and so somehow I think that the federations, they need to invest in skills, they need to invest in pools of skills, they need to make sure that when they come, for example, in Morocco, that they can help in financing, I don't know, competency centers or things like that, and then getting all these resources with some flexibility also for those companies to get those people going to their country. But that needs to work that way.
Ces personnes puissent retourner dans leur pays. Mais il faut que cela aille dans les deux sens, sinon on en revient.
Morocco do a lot of efforts to train, for example, IT people, and that every year they take the flight to leave the country. It's a waste of energy, and then we enter in a lose-win situation where we need then to go to Senegal, and then we let the problem into Senegal, and then we push the problem somewhere else. So I believe that we need to work between federation, with government, with facilities. I think no need to go to 100 countries. Let's just start with Morocco, with I believe in North Africa is the most advanced country into technologies. Tunisia is very good also, but I think if there is that flexibility, some federation, and that those federations are pushed, then there is a lot of things to do. I don't know, Sergo.
Many thanks.
If it was responding to your questions.
Indeed, it did. Much appreciated, Naim. I retain from your intervention two important things here. One, the role of these multinationals or European multinationals for the intra company or corporate mobility, which makes then the mobility very logical and very seamless part of the equation. And the second is a very good practice, actually, which can be really thought through to see how in the future talent partnerships this can be factored, that there is a joint investment by different companies with the participation of the federations in the skills building and development, so that then everyone in this specific sector can contribute from the skills trained at those organizations. Thanks a lot again, Naim. My next question, I would like to, before giving the floor to Eden, who will speak about the projects which we see here also in the chat, to go back to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, you have now heard a lot of options. First of all, you confirmed the hypothesis, but now my question to you as an external, let's say, observer to these discussions. So what would be the 1 to 3 concrete ways that the talent partnerships can contribute to unlocking FDI for African countries? What do you think?
Well, these are not. This is for me or for
Emmanuel?
Okay, sorry.
It's for me. Thanks, Sergio, for that question. So I think one of the things that we need to first of all understand is how businesses and entrepreneurs basically think. On the first thing, a business was set up to maximize shareholder value. So a business would invest if investment makes sense. Like, you don't have to convince, once investment makes sense, an entrepreneur will invest. That's all they need to figure out is, does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, then we won't invest. If it makes sense, we will invest, right? So when you understand that, then you understand how do you appeal to an entrepreneur to make an investment decision. Because on the EU side of things, these projects are not for profit, they're impact-driven type projects. And that's the lens that the EU uses even in evaluating proposals, right? So you're looking at it from an impact, not for profits, sort of global view. On the flip side, the entrepreneur is evaluating it based on zeros and ones. Is this profitable? How would it be profitable? How long will it take it for it to be profitable? How much investment do I need to put in before it becomes profitable? And what's the risk involved? What are the key things I need to think about that might tank this whole investment? And that's an entrepreneur thinks. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is sort of the role I think this kind of programs can play. And I think that they should play a more catalytic role. And another example is from our case study with Nigeria and Lithuania and the Digital Explorers program. A lot of those companies have not had any engagement with Nigerians before or with Nigeria as a country. And all they know is what they've heard in the news, which obviously, again, I said is not very great. On the flip side, they would not be, at that point, the risk appetite to invest in Nigeria is too high. Or rather, the risk involved is too high. And so it's going to be very hard for you to get someone with the necessary risk appetite to want to put in that kind of investment, right? I don't know Nigerians. I've never been there. And in the news, I don't see anything about Nigeria and talent. So there is no indication why I should be thinking about investing in Nigeria or in Nigerian talent, right? So now, these kinds of programs on the flip side can say, okay, let's help you make the upfront investment. So without you having to put up that money, we will fund you to go to Nigeria. We will fund you to hire Nigerians. We will fund you to take a test of it and see if it's something that you like. With no liability on your end, with no commitment on your end, all we're asking you to say is, if you like them, hire them. And the truth is this, like, you don't need to convince an employer when he finds something that he likes to hire. He will hire, right? Like, I know that I've had times on some of my previous jobs where I find a very smart person. I don't have an open role in my organization, but I hire the person first. I'm like, look, you're super smart and you're available. I don't know the next time I'm going to find someone like you that's available on the market. So just come in first, and then we'll figure out how we move things around. But that's how entrepreneurs think. They would hire if they find great talent. So I think on one hand, these types of projects need to be catalytic. And in being catalytic means you need to be very strategic about how you think about it. You need to understand what is the vision of the entrepreneur and where do they find challenges. For the Digital Explorers program, there were certain challenges. The first challenge was they didn't know. So we needed them to know. And for them to know, we needed them to travel to Nigeria. So they needed to fund that trip. their businesses will not fund that trip because they cannot see a direct correlation with zeros and ones. They were not sure if they will find talent, so they were not going to invest in that trip. The second thing that we needed them to do was we needed them to understand the process or the difference between the talents and what the market demand is in Lithuania versus what it is in Nigeria. So we now invested in getting the right facilitators in the room to have these conversations with them and to understand that. They would not invest in any research on Nigerian market because, like I said again, it wasn't a potential investment destination. The third thing was they needed for the people to work in Lithuania, they needed to have some level of residency permit. And it's quite a laborious and expensive process for companies to do. Now, again, no company would want to make that investment upfront except they are 100% sure, or at least 80% sure, that the talent that they're doing this for is going to be worth the investment. Now, at the beginning, companies were not interested in going through that process. They were not interested in paying those fees. They were not interested in taking out that time. But guess what happened after the program? Towards the end of the program, those people you've worked with over the 1 year, their visas are about to expire. They have to go back compulsorily. But guess what companies did? The companies invested the time and the money to retain those talents. What changed? The investment made sense. And so for projects like this, you need to take the catalytic approach, but to do that, you need to understand what the barriers are for entrepreneurs and businesses in Europe to make those investments in talent or in people in Africa. And once you know what those loopholes or what those barriers are, then the project can be very strategic in removing those barriers. And once those barriers are removed or reduced, guess what? You would be able to catalyze investments. Like I said again, entrepreneurs will always invest if the investment makes sense. That's what their business is about. It's all about investment.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Very insightful indeed. We sometimes think in very complex terms, but very easy solutions could be out there, especially when it comes to removing the barriers. So thanks again for your feedback. And now continuing the discussion on possible action points for the future talent partnerships. We are obviously not starting from scratch. We were discussing the digital explorers and there are many other projects. Therefore, it would be interesting to map the existing project landscape. And we already had also in our chat function a lot of references. So I would like to ask Eden the question. Eden has also contributed to the report, but Eden is now also the project manager for the Inspire project. So Eden, what are the lessons learned from the previous EU-funded mobility initiatives, and how can they be tweaked to make them a trigger of sustainable development, be it through further investments or promotion?
Pour promouvoir l'investissement, promouvoir la...
Please also tell us about some of the key learnings you have incorporated into the ICMPD's new initiative on skills partnerships, the project Inspire. Eden, please.
Thank you for the question, Sergo. Well, MPF has been implementing several models of labor mobility between Africa and Europe since 2018, and we've been hearing about this from the digital explorers. The majority of these initiatives have brought trainees from African countries to EU countries for internship or apprenticeship programs, sometimes with the possibility of permanent employment in the host countries. In addition to this skills development aspect, most of these projects also had components that aimed, as you said, at maximizing the development impact or the outcome for the countries of origin. And this is by reducing the risk of brain drain we've been talking about, but also fostering institutional capacities of partner countries on issues such as the management of labor mobility, but also the general talent management and so on and so forth. Now, if we focus on these types of components, we can highlight three key lessons learned, or better, promising approaches that can trigger long-lasting benefits for partner countries and can also be replicated in different geographical areas or partnership models. The first lesson learned is the importance of investing in skills development programs that are adapted or responsive to the labor market needs of partner countries. Following the example, for instance, of the Global Skills Partnership. And this is a model that the PALIN project has piloted in specifically in Morocco by offering two kinds of programs. For instance, on the one hand, something called the domestic track training, which was intended to increase the pool of ICT professionals in Morocco, and this is by training and preparing young graduates to then join the local labor market. And on the second hand, we have this track called international or away track training, and this was destined for a selected number of candidates who would be trained and intended to move to join companies here in Belgium. So we can see from here that including this type of domestic track training to simpler forms of labor mobility project has the advantage of increasing the human capital of partner countries, and it can also facilitate their access to technology as well as finance that can obviously then support over long term their educational and training systems. The second lesson learned is the relevance of collaboration between training institutions of countries of origin and countries of destination. We can see this kind of good example, in a pilot project that GIZ is implementing within the framework of MPF, of course, and is in its second phase between Morocco and Germany. And the advantage of this type of support measure can be many. I can mention one. Now, in the case of Morocco, for instance, the linkage between the vocational centers of Germany and Morocco is currently helping to improving the quality of training in Morocco in line with international standards. And it's doing so by also offering the opportunity to formalize the collaboration between the two institutions, all benefits that will last long, of course. Another development benefit is when the collaboration between training institutions can or may involve also the development of new curricula or TVAT programs. And in this case, the participation of the private sector will be critical in the whole process. And that is because it will help to align the training program of partner countries with the needs of the local employers or the local labor market. The third lesson learned is from circular mobility projects, where long-term benefits can be gained for partner countries by assisting them on measures that can help to retain talent in the country, particularly after their return in the country of the origin. And here again, the support measures can take several forms. I could mention a couple of examples, such as, for instance, ensuring that the trainees that are returning back home are recruited, for instance, by the local branch of the company that has trained them in Europe, for instance, or by any other local company that that would be willing to or is looking for these exact skills. Another example is supporting partner countries in the recognition of the new skills that returning trainees are bringing with them from abroad, whether these skills are validated by certificates or not. And this recognition would actually help them to integrate the local labor market. And finally, another type of post-return support measures that can be given to trainees could also be, and particularly trainees that are or who wish to set up their own business, may be financial support that can help them to start their project, the business project. And in here, therefore, we are encouraging entrepreneurship in the partner country. So of course, these are just examples in a nutshell, only very few examples of many promising practices that can be scaled up and replicated for future mobility projects. Now, to answer your second question, let me first give you just a background, a little background on this new initiative called Inspire Project, before I can cover then one of the key learnings that we have considered when we were designing this project. The Inspire Project is a new initiative we started in December 2021, thanks to the financial support of Germany. And in this project, our partner countries, in line with the talent partnerships, are essentially partners from Africa, the Western Balkans, the Eastern Partnership, and the Eastern Partnership region. In this project, our main goal is to initiate a public-private dialogue on skills partnerships between European companies that are based in Europe, but also in partner countries, local companies, the federations, industry groups, and of course, the national authorities from the target countries and EU member states that are interested in engaging in skills partnership. We'll be doing this dialogue in order to ultimately create, incubate for skills partnership schemes, which will be backed by funding and of course, ready for implementation. Now back to your question, one of the main lessons that we have considered when we were designing the Inspire project is mostly focused on the process. And this is ensuring from the very beginning that the private sector, the strong involvement of the private sector in this dialogue, but also the entire incubation process. And we are currently in the process, and over the next 2 and 3 months, we'll be really focused on identifying the private sector who will be involved in such a dialogue. I should mention here that, of course, we understand the importance of government-to-government relationships, but we also believe that the success of any skills partnership will really depend on the strong involvement and engagement of the private sector. And this is why our plan is really to create platforms for dialogue for each target country we'll be working with. And in this platform, we'll be consulting with the private sector around their needs and their interests. And the idea is, of course, to create alliances between the public sector and the private sector, alliances that will lead to skills partnerships, which involve mobility. And here, the type of skills we hope to, or we expect to be developing are skills partnership that have a strong development focus and that will deliver benefits to migrants, first of all, but also to the countries that will be involved in the whole partnerships, so countries of origin and destination, and of course, the participating employers too. And for this to happen, we are planning to devoting considerable time and energy and efforts exploring the existing models of partnership with all the various stakeholders. also exploring innovative approaches and giving really particular attention to the type of promising practices that I mentioned earlier. And the whole idea is, of course, once we have explored these models, is to support them in designing the partnership schemes that we hope will fit the needs of everybody involved. And this is all from my side, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Eden. Thank you for this overview of the existing practices and possible modalities. Now we have completed our core session, and the floor is open for questions and answers. We have only 2 questions. I'm very much surprised from the viewers. And mainly the first one is to Mimshach Obioha. At what stage did the direct physical interaction between the host and sending companies take place? How many times was such interaction repeated? And then the second question is about the role of diaspora in the potential skills partnerships. So if anyone from the panelists would like to intervene on the role of diaspora. And obviously, the panelists are free to ask each other also questions. I saw that Ali raised the hand before. So yes, first let's start with the question. Yes, please, Ali. You would like to...
Non, pas de question. Sinon, répondre, quelqu'un parlait de diaspora, etc. Je ne sais pas.
Oui, OK. On va commencer avec Emmanuel, pour voilà, les modalités, comment les sociétés se sont rencontrées, et après sur l'aspect de l'implication de diaspora. Voilà. Please, Mimshach Obioha, the floor is yours. So if you can tell us at what stage did the direct physical interaction between the host and sending companies take place, and how many times?
All right. So for me to talk about stage, and I probably have to talk about the whole design of the Digital Explorers recruitment.
Oh, we have only 10 minutes left.
Yes. So it started out with a call and a lot of engagements within the ecosystem. So the distribution was a key strategy, ensuring that it got to the right people, the right networks, the right communities, and all of that. The second, and then we also had some high profile people refer, so people who are respected in the ecosystem.
Donc bon, là, beaucoup de personnes nous avons des personnes de référence pour chaque.
Had to apply. There was a test, a virtual test. After that test, there was a phone interview, which was a sort of like a virtual interview. For some of the companies, they got their HR involved at this stage, so they could actually now begin to meet people, but virtually. After that, we shortlisted some people and then invited them for the physical hackathon. Now, it was at this physical hackathon that we now had the delegation from Lithuania join and engage. Now, it was not just an interview, as it were, it was an engagement. So part of the people that came from Lithuania were mentors at the hackathon. So it wasn't just about asking questions, but it was seeing and experiencing the people work and engaging and interacting and asking questions and understanding their way of thinking and their approach to working. So that was where we had the first physical engagement before the travel to Lithuania and all of that. So what we had was at the hackathon, there was that engagement, then there were interviews right after.
Ensuite, il y a eu les entretiens, les entreprises avaient déjà
had conversations with after the hackathon, and then for many of them, they were able to make some decisions or reach back to HQ to get to share what their experiences were and then make final hiring decisions. In terms of the role of diaspora and this is just my 2 cents, my role of diaspora in programs like this, they're a bunch. On one hand, if people in diaspora already have businesses in those existing countries, and they can be very instrumental in promoting the programs within those countries and also sort of
pour mettre en œuvre des programmes dans leur pays, mais également pour casser les stéréotypes, pour
engage with or experience Nigerians or Africans before. The other thing that diasporans can do is when people finally move to the host country, you have to understand that there is a huge culture curve that also sort of affects people when they get there. Like there are lots of things for many of the people that were on our program. It was the first time they had ever gone outside the country, and so they haven't engaged with foreign countries before, or foreigners, or worked in foreign companies before. So diasporans can be a very big help in buffering and ensuring that the people still feel at home, they still see familiar faces, they're still able to engage. And then finally and thirdly, diasporans can also be a catalyst for attracting investment. Now, for Telesoftas, when Telesoftas wanted to come to Nigeria, they needed a local representative that could ensure that they were making the right decisions, could advise, could be like an interpreter. Luckily for Telesoftas, I was available and I was on the market, and I was able to make that move into Telesoftas. For many of these companies, they might not have a person like this. Diasporans can also play a role in ensuring that this soft landing sort of occurs with the people who want to make that transition or make that investment in local country. That would be my 2 cents. Thank you.
Many thanks. Very, very interesting. Monsieur Ali, c'est à vous, s'il vous plaît, pour le rôle de Diaspora.
Oui, quelqu'un a parlé de Diaspora, comme tout à l'heure on a parlé de fuite de cerveau. Permettez-moi de vous dire que même si nous avons les meilleures conventions entre le secteur public ou le secteur privé,
public and private sector conventions and all commitments in the world, the right question to be asked is why these people are leaving. They leave for different reasons, and it will not be possible to hold them back if they want to leave. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. We don't talk about nationality. There is a brain drain from European brains to the United States or to Asia or Australia. How long do I have? 30 seconds or do I have more? Well, you can speak for 6 minutes in total, don't worry. No, very quickly, very quickly. So I would not talk about brain drain. There is an issue in saying in Morocco that no cat will leave the house if the house is a happy place. So as a manager of a hiring cabinet, but I am also in charge of migration on the International Organization of Companies. So we do a lot of work, and we always talk about this assumption, but also to trade unions to say that there is freedom of movement. So we have skills that we train, and this is the duty of the state to train them. But if they have to leave, the issue is deeper and goes deeper than a partnership, potential partnership. And I want to end on a very positive note. On the contrary, many people who left Morocco, and this is a specialist hire speaking. So we were affected by brain drain in the past, but a lot of people came back, and this is something very positive. These people coming back to Morocco with new skills, new knowledge that they were sharing with Moroccans, fellow Moroccans. So I really want to end on this positive note. So skills do not have any nationality. Someone from Spain can have very good skills and do a lot of work, but also another person from Africa or elsewhere in the world can do as well, or even better. And they all have potentially something to offer to my country. So this is how I will end. Thank you for bearing with me.
Manuel, the next question is to you, actually, from the public. The question is the following. Manuel mentioned there is a scarcity of practical skills in those 3 fields covered by the study. In this respect, what is the expectation of the private sector vis-a-vis the public sector in training and developing the skills needed in demand? How the costs could be shared? So what are the expectations from the private sector and how the costs could be shared? Here, if I may, just to give you a hint, there was also one of the possible solutions listed in the report was this Singapore type of skills fund, which could be set up. Maybe worth mentioning it as well. Please, Manuel.
Okay. So once again, these are not my words, are the company's words. I see that in Morocco there's an ongoing debate about vocational training and training in general, especially in these three sectors. The Ministry of Industry and all the ministries in Morocco are pushing in these three areas. So they're willing to share the burden. That's the first step. That's very important always, that public sector is willing to share the burden. Most of the companies said that they carried out in-company training, but they were willing to participate with this public sector. So now we have to get the matching done. And this is how, like, this type of programs, the one developed by the European Union, the ICMPD, are very important because they are facilitators and catalytic of this matching. And for me, that's as a result of the study, that's the biggest answer to that question. How would the private sector know the public sector and how the public sector can help? In this sense, avoid self-trading. Most of the companies said that this was a second best option always, and always in company, and this burden can be shared easily if there's a fluent dialogue. Then I think Morocco is aiming to do, and I think that Morocco will achieve.
Thank you, Manuel. Mimshach, you wanted to come in? This is on the same question.
Yes, I just wanted to make a very short remark, but also might be very controversial. Maybe two remarks. The first is
not only 1 minute before the end of the webinar.
Really short. The first is on sort of things that can incentivize companies to make this investment. And one of the biggest challenges today is visa. And on one hand, visa for people that are going to work there, but also visa for people that even already work and are trying to travel in between countries. So for example, I face a huge challenge getting visas to go to Lithuania, even though I'm already hired by a Lithuanian company, and it's quite a laborious and painful process. That aside the way. The second thing I wanted to mention is on the brain drain conversation. And more recently, I was introduced to a new word called brain waste, and how that while there's a need for lots of these really skilled people and they're traveling and there's a brain drain conversation, but there's also a lot of talents that are here that don't have access to work. And because of that, there is a sort of a conversation around brain waste. Now, this is what I think, and it is quite controversial, but I think that one of the key things that the international community can do is if the local governments begin to understand and align incentives and see an opportunity for revenue generation from the talent that they have, what would happen is that they would make so much more investment in that talent. Today, the way educational institutions sort of are rated is not by how many people actually do get jobs after. And so what this means is that they are not incentivized to give people
We lost you, Mimshach. In the meantime, just to answer Marco Funk's question, Eden will provide the answer.
Actually benefits.
Okay. So you're back. Sorry.
Oh my God, I've been speaking to myself.
Yes. No.
Okay. So,
please, if you could,
so what I was saying is,
summarize
is that we need to create a model.
Okay. Well, there seems to be a problem with the internet. Eden,
talent can literally be the next major export for many. Governments will be incentivized to invest in creating talents that are actually global standard. Today, lots of people are being trained, but not with relevant skills that the market requires. But there needs to be a lining of incentives for that to happen. It might be very businessy, but I think that once incentives are aligned, we would actually have more governments investing heavily in producing global quality talent. Because we have people. We don't lack people. We only lack talent.
Thank you. this is a very good point to conclude on. Thank you, everyone. We have a couple more questions from Anne Simon, for instance, about the financial effectiveness of the EU-funded projects. Well, the report didn't look into this aspect, rather it mapped different initiatives, existing initiatives, and what were the lessons learned. However, on the MPF website, after this webinar, those questions which are left unanswered, we will provide answers, and I will inquire with my MPF colleagues, Anne, if they have the answer to this question. And allow me now to extend my warm thanks to all the panelists. Thank you, Eden, Mimshach, Monsieur Ali, Manuel, and Naim for your very good contributions. Many thanks to our viewers who were watching this webinar for almost 2 hours. I would like to encourage you to check all the links which we have provided now in the chat function, and we will, as I mentioned, we will provide all the key takeaways and answers to unaddressed questions on the MPF website. Thank you, especially the MPF organizing team and the leadership of MPF. Oleg is here with us, Jennifer as well, and special thanks to Jiyoung and other team members. Thanks again, and see you maybe soon in another dialogue, public-private dialogue on talent partnerships. Many thanks and have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Au revoir. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.